Welcome everybody to my channel. Today's pick a card reading is a little bit different, hopefully a little bit fun, but also one that will have good contemplative information and support for you across your life. It's all about what supernatural entities, species, tribes and talents do you have a natural affinity to? Do you have a connection to in some way, either from this life or potentially past lives if you believe in past lives? And it was inspired, in fact, by a viewer of another video of mine who commented about her sense of connection to creatures in the sort of vampire and werewolf literature that we have. And I made a promise to her that I would do a video like this at some point. And what I had to do was I had to find the right oracle deck to really do it justice. And I believe I now have that, which is the Supernatural Oracle, which you can see there. It gives me the information I need to do a reading like this and to connect in with that. So what this reading will look at is what those natural affinities are, what those natural talents might be, how that plays out in your day-to-day life, around relationships, around career, around creativity, whatever sort of energies most connect. And it can be taken on a very literal level if you believe in a largely populated and diverse universe where these sorts of entities may exist on this or other dimensions and interact with us, or you can take it on an allegorical level. So what I mean by that is, for instance, if a vampire came up and you don't believe in vampires, you may go, well, this actually connects to a sense of empathy and energy exchange. In fact, I think that for many empaths, there is a sense of absorbing energy and life energy around them that could be seen to be vampiric, but not in a bad way. And that's the other thing that's important about this reading. I am not looking at any of these species as evil or dark. If there is anything that comes up that could be seen that way, then we will look at it in terms of energies and shadow to deal with, not anything else that is necessarily a dark thing. So this is about the things that are positive for you and how understanding those affinities can help you in your life. So I do think anybody who's clicked on this is game for this. It is going to be a bit different. It could be very interesting depending on what comes out. And I do hope the person who inspired it is here and enjoys the reading, but I hope that all of you do and that you take something from it, whether it's in fun or whether it's in something that's more helpful and serious for your life. So like with all readings, the important thing is to tune into the right deck. And of course, as I always say, you can go to more than one deck if you feel drawn to more than one. But to help in working that out, I'm using crystals as always. So I have an amethyst crystal on pile 1, a lapis lazuli on pile 2, and a tiger's eye on pile 3. When you know which deck or decks you want to go to, which readings you want to go to, the timestamps will be in the description box below. If you're not sure, by all means pause the video and contemplate and meditate on it until you do feel that connection. And when you know which reading or readings you want to go to, I'll see you there. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. These cards off to the side are the oracles that we'll look at once we've gone through this foundation and the tarot. That these oracles were intuitively chosen ahead of the reading for this, so we'll look at what they're telling us near the end. But this is the foundation for the reading. This is to get a sense of what your affinities are and what your talents are. And I must say your talents and your understanding, your wisdom is very strong. The strongest affinity is to things in the witchcraft area. So that doesn't, as I say, need to be anything you have to worry about if you have beliefs around witchcraft. This could very well be more around spiritual sort of understandings, particularly when we've got astrology and numerology here. It suggests that you are very well versed in this or would have a natural talent for those sorts of things. If you've ever, and it's very interesting that we've got numerology and astrology together, because that's like the structure of the universe, pile 1. It's like sacred mathematics, sacred geometry, numbers. The power of the universe and the connections of the universe can be very well seen in terms of symbols and numbers. And so the planetary energies of astrology connect in strongly. It's a mathematical process to see the connections and the transits and so forth. And numerology, of course, is all about the power of numbers, the numbers that you see synchronistically, the numbers that connect to your birth date, the numbers that connect to the year, anything along those lines. You definitely have an ability there. There is almost an academic feeling around this, which is not to say you're sort of stuffy and sitting in libraries, but I'm getting a vision of the TV series A Discovery of Witches, where the witch, the main witch character in that, is someone who you first really see her doing this research into alchemy and so forth. Is that kind of energy around it. So if you haven't ever looked into things like that, this is a really strong indication. If you wanted to do it, you would be naturally adept at doing it. But many of the people who've come here may in fact use these sorts of energies and these sorts of practices in some form of witch practice. So I wouldn't be surprised if many who've come here do actually identify with witchcraft and with a practice and with rituals and with connections to others in that way. If you do and you haven't looked into these, then I think that Spirit is strongly saying think about that, because you will be very, very good at that if you want to do it. And my sense is, if that's the case, you've brought it in before. You are very, very psychic. You are very, very precognitive. There's energy that comes to you from the third eye, and you can also manifest. So all of this, I do think most of the people who've come here will in fact be established in this way. And whether or not, as I say, you're doing particular modalities in it, you are going to be established in some way. And if not, you're the sort of person who's had prophetic dreams. You're the sort of person who can almost telepath. You know when somebody's going to ring you. You have a sense about what's going on in somebody's mind beyond being able to read body language or micro expressions or anything like that. You have a definite telepathic, prophetic ability. And with Pegasus, the capacity to manifest. So that's why overall I think that you will be drawn to and be able to use basic skills here. Not basic in the sense of being low level, but like the core skills, I think is a better term for it. The core skills around understanding the nature of the universe, understanding the power of manifestation, bringing things into being, and knowing the impact on others more generally with the third eye, with getting the channeled information. What I'm really getting though is that for some of you, you may not have looked into these areas. And if you haven't, then Spirit is really encouraging you to do it. You could indeed have a business with this if you don't already. You know, you could be someone who takes this knowledge and that ability to help others, and in fact to make money, make a business out of it, because you've definitely got the abilities and you're definitely strongly connected. I do think that many of you though already know this, and it's really just a question of how far have you gone in your studies and in what direction. Have you relied mainly on the very core abilities that you have and of ritual and so forth, or are you looking into the structure of the universe, because you have that capacity to do that? So that's pretty exciting. So let's have a look at how this is. We'll use a tarot now to see how this is playing out in your life in general. So I'm going to pull some cards for that, and then I'm going to pull some cards around the impact of other people on this. And so that may be picking up other people in this sort of area that you connect with. It may also be picking up how other people respond to these abilities that you have, pile one. So firstly, Spirit, give me some sense of how this ability is playing out in pile one's life at the moment. Okay, so firstly, I'm getting the sense that for some of you, this is a big departure from what your childhood was. Actually, I'm getting both. I'm getting that in some people who've come here, this is bringing into being your childhood connections, that your family was maybe into these sorts of things, and that's how you've learnt it. But if that's the case, there's a little bit of a warning about whether you need to find your own way and develop your own approach opposed to what that approach was. But I think for many, there is maybe a sense where this ability has made you feel a little bit alone in your family, alone in the background, sort of, who is my family? Who is my tribe? Where do I really belong? It's not necessarily that you had an unhappy childhood with the Six of Cups upright. You have fond memories, but there is a sense potentially of a disconnect, as though in your earlier life, that ability that you have, you suppressed in some way. So I'm getting the sense of the sort of child who knew what was going on in the family dynamics, what was going on between his or her parents, and shouldn't have known in any real way, and maybe freaked your family out a bit sometimes. There's a sense where you suppressed it in the earlier part of your life. It's also possible that you had, through the third eye, with that sort of stuff coming in, it was like a rush in of energy, a rush in information that was hard to process. I think that's partly why Spirit is saying, if you aren't already working in certain practices that give you a structure to understand it, then it's important to do that. And I'm getting that it's very important at the very least to get your chart done if you haven't, because you will find a lot of this energy and this ability is shown in the chart. And that will actually help you understand, particularly if in the earlier part of your life, some of this seemed a bit scary or seemed a little bit to isolate you within your family or around your friends in some way. There's certainly a sense that even to today, you may be suppressing some of your authentic connections and some of that ability. It's like maybe many of the people who've come here have come because they think, well, I think I've kind of got that ability, but I don't really know. And can I really believe in this, or is this a fantasy? I think that in fact, that's just at the moment you're suppressing it, you're focusing on other things. And I do think that's partly why Spirit is saying understanding these sort of things gives you a structure or a foundation. Because if you think about it, if you really step back and you allow yourself to believe this about yourself and not to feel it's diluted in any way, you'll be able to see how you brought things into being. I'm getting for some of you, maybe you did that quite naturally and easily when you were young, and that was a bit frightening to you or to other people. I'm literally getting that some of you may have been able to send energy without knowing that was what you're doing. And in some cases, you may have felt a bit guilty about what you did. But that's about not understanding how to harness it and how to understand yourself. I think that's why these things are so important. I also get the sense that numerology is coming up because look out for numbers and synchronicity. Look at what your birth number is compared, say, to this year's number. There's something in that. There is a time, there's a reason you've come to this reading. There is time for you to step forward and to do more with this and make some of these a reality. And they're not a fantasy. I think that might be part of what this is saying. Pegasus may seem like a fantastical creature or a winged horse, but it's representative of the raw energy of a horse, of movement, of speed, and the wings to take you into the air. And so I think this will do it. It's something in your intellect. It's something in your mind that will help you do that, will help you unlock this. With the Magician reversed, I think that many of you have been very connected to this in past lives and may in fact have been connected to high magic as well. And for whatever reason, you haven't been bringing it in yet. But Spirit is saying you are coming to realize this, and you are coming to separate yourself from those that aren't like you to find those that are. But even within that, I get the sense if you joined a group, if you joined a coven or something like that, you would still be standing separate. There is something about the wisdom that you have with this and the ability you have that puts you a little bit apart. And I think Spirit is saying, be aware that's okay. That's good. That's you just owning who you are. That's why it's really important to see your chart. And if you can get to an astrologer that works with harmonics and asteroids and fixed stars, that would be really helpful as well. I grew up with an astrologer who did that. My brother was an astrologer who did that. And there's a whole level of astrology that has to do with harmonics that can tell you things about your psychic abilities and so forth at a whole other level. So if you could find an astrologer that works in that space, that would be wonderful. Or you could become an astrologer who works in that space and you'll just be way ahead of your time if that's the case. It's certainly saying that you could make a business of this. It's the same thing I got again. So I think for those of you who have moved through this and have realised that you don't have to be the sum total of your past, you can be someone who stands in their own power, you're actually at a sense now where you could bring this into being. So let's have a look. Let's ask Spirit for a little bit more tarot about how others are either responding to you or what you have to deal with at the moment around this so that you can bring this ability in or further consolidate it if you have for your highest good and the highest good of others. Okay, so this is suggesting to me that there is potentially someone around you, while you will always be someone who stands in your own truth and your own power, someone around you who could potentially give you seed funding or support you in some way in what you're doing. It could even be someone who introduces you to a larger group or a larger network around this where you can feel more at home. So there is someone around that could do that. It's coming up as the Page of Pentacles, so it could well be an earth sign. It doesn't have to be. It could be somebody who has earth strongly in their chart. And again, if you're an astrologer, you may well be able to work that out and understand that. But some of this, I think, is actually, although this is about other people and impacts of other people, this looks like where you've doubted yourself has come from other people. So whether it is from your family in the beginning, as I felt, or whether it's just that if you want to talk about this with people, maybe many of them say, oh, look, you've got to get more realistic. This is a fantasy, and like, you can put all this energy into something, it's not going to come about. But that's not true. All that is doing is making you doubt, but finding the person who is the right connection will turn that around. Certainly, it looks like you are going to relieve yourself of the burden of other people's opinions when you find this connection. And you may have already found them. So if you found someone who really does connect with this side of you, then you're on the right track. But what Spirit is saying is, in the process of doing it, do not dim your own light. If you go into a group and there's some competition in it, don't let that dim your light. You need to stand in your truth because you're bringing a lot to the table here. And there could be within the group that you join, even when there is an affinity of this sort of ability, that you may be in actual fact or a little bit ahead of the people that you're with, even if you're new to it. So there is something where you may be asked to compromise. And I think you'll have to make the decision, because sometimes it's okay to compromise within a group, as long as you can still keep the purity of what you're trying to do yourself, and potentially, as I say, do it as a business. You could do that. You may choose to do that, to have that connection. And that may be part of the pragmatism, but don't do it if someone, even within a group that appears to be part of this, if they start competing with you and trying to suppress you in a similar way that you've had before, then you need to make the decisions about which group you're in and whether you stay with that group or how you manage yourself in that. And I do think, again, it's why Spirit is saying if you aren't already adept in those things, learn it, because you have this natural ability and that will help you stand separate. So that's pretty powerful. I think it is definitely saying that you are coming across other people where you have that affinity, but potentially even within those groups, you do need to look out for competition and people who want to say, well, I'm more, I've got more witchcraft ability and experience than you, you're new to it, or whatever it might be. And I'm not saying all of you are new to it. So let's have a look at the oracle cards that we have to see what other information we have to help you make sure you stand true to yourself and that you only suppress that light when it is a compromise that works for you. So firstly, we have community. So there's definitely a sense of finding your community is there, and that's a really good thing. But then we've also got mind. And I think that's playing on two levels, Pile 1. Firstly, I think it is about the independence of the mind. And so, and by learning these things if you haven't, or even taking them to a higher level if you have, using your mind, you have a very strong, clever mind. That's why I say there's a sense of academia around you in some way, as well as the ability. And that's one of the things that helps you make those decisions and stand independent even within a community. And when you do that, it works well. But you may also, and I think this is a bit of a warning, have from some people mind games. So I think it's just being aware. It's a pattern you've seen before. It's just in a different form and in a different group. So find the community that supports you, that has all those lovely colours, that has that sense of togetherness and brightness. But use the mind to protect yourself and to find your way almost through a labyrinth. I know that's not actually a labyrinth, it's more a spiral, but I have a sense of a labyrinth there. But you do have the mind to do this, Pile 1. You do. So let's have a look at some other oracle cards that came for you. Okay, it's interesting that they naturally fell here. So firstly, we have lavender, which is the third eye. And remember, the third eye was part of what you had as your basic abilities and affinities. So you very much telepathically get stuff. But I think what this might be saying is that you might often just think that's thinking. Maybe things that are coming to you telepathically feel exactly the same as thoughts. And so I think it's really owning and understanding, how much you channel and how much you understand, so you don't second guess yourself. And this is also with lavender about compassion, empathy, and sensitivity. So you probably are a natural sort of empath. That's great. And that helps the mind as well too. So that you're making judgments that come from a good place, from a compassionate place, but nevertheless from a clear place. If you have the sense that you're seeing patterns from the past, you will be right. Then the decision is whether or not you can move to compassion, empathy, and work with it, or whether you move into the jet energy here, which is more about concluding something, ending something. So I think Spirit is very much saying, be in the driver's seat. When you are doing this, you will probably go through a number of groups and a number of connections till you find the absolute right one. Doesn't mean that everybody within the groups is going to be wrong for you, but you are on a growth cycle, I believe. You are on a cycle of remembering what you've known before. And some of that may threaten some people. So just be aware that that's the case and make the decisions between where can empathy, compassion and understanding create community, and where does it create mind games where you need to separate. And I think it may have been a pattern in your life in general, and I think you probably learned it right in childhood about what you do and don't say and who you do and don't speak your truth to. So let's have a look at another couple of cards. Oh, look at this. Empathy again. And discomfort. Yeah, it's saying the same thing over and over here, I think. You are meant to be in a group, you are meant to be in a tribe, but you are meant to stand separate within it as well, because most of the time you're going to be ahead of the people that you're with. You are going to have that extra power. I think that's why I very much had that sense of the Discovery of Witches story. If you're familiar with it, the character, the academic character there, was a very powerful witch, but she came into this not even knowing at first that that was what she was. And then there were power issues to deal with that. So I think it's showing that there's a bit of a template there that aligns with your journey. Your capacity for empathy is fantastic. You sometimes feel uncomfortable in this space because it is bringing up what's happened before, but it is to allow you to decide what to keep and what not to keep. And again, I'm going to go back to the astrology and the numerology. Spirit wants you to have information. You need information. Information makes you feel confident about something. And that's the real value for you about the astrology and the numerology. You will see the patterns you need to see so you can make those decisions. So talking about astrology, the last two cards that were pre-chosen for this to conclude the reading are actually from an astrology deck. So let's have a look at what astrology energy is around you at the moment. Wow. Okay. So firstly, Pluto. The tarot card associated with that is judgment, and so that's picking up this mind energy. You need to make decisions about who to have and not have in your life so that you can progress this natural talent that you have. The ruler is Scorpio, so that's picking up that depth, understanding of people, a really good instinct. Allow yourself to believe in your instincts because you know, but if you have the need to do it, use astrology as a backup to verify and validate what you do. I do feel with most of you that eventually you'll get to the point where you're using astrology and numerology for a different reason, but at the moment I think it's important to validate the ability that you actually have. It's the phrase of Pluto is I am power. It's a transformative energy. You are coming into power. You are coming into an understanding of yourself. And we've got the 10th house. So that is out in the world. It's again why I feel like many of the people here, if you wanted to, you could do it in a business, or you could be on YouTube doing this sort of thing. And you'll find you really have a strong voice. If you're already doing that, then you probably already have a strong voice. And this is just really emphasizing that again, that is part of the validation as well. Whatever you do out, you're meant to be seen in the world with this. The planet that rules it is Saturn, so it is hard won. It is not, and it took time. This is why I think for most of you, it's probably from past lives as well. Though for some of you, you may be in the sort of more mature age, and this may be just that this is the culmination of many, many years of being involved in things to connect to that sort of energy. But whatever it is, it's meant to be out in the world. It's meant to be part of who you are in the world. So own that and understand that. And I definitely think if you want to use any of these skills and affinities for a business, Spirit is absolutely saying you can do it. So your affinity is towards the broader sense of witchcraft, manifestation, law of attraction, any of those sort of energies, you bring with you a lot of ability, potentially also a lot of knowledge already. But if not, that's what Spirit is saying, get that in your kit bag. You will be remembering, I think. It won't be really new to you when you do it. You'll find that you have an accelerated learning curve. But there's definitely a lot here for you. This isn't just a fun reading. This is a reading that is saying you could make this who you are in the world, and you could potentially make a lot of money out of it, I think, or certainly have a very high profile and a very positive profile. But because of that, you do need to be aware that there's some competition around you. You do need to know when to cut people out of your life, put boundaries around you. And if you're doing witchcraft, you may well know how to do that energetically as well as in reality, in sort of day-to-day life. But there's definitely a pathway here for you if you want it, Pile 1, and definitely an affinity to something with the ability and the knowledge to go with it. So I hope that that was enjoyable, and I hope it resonates. And if so, please like the video and subscribe. And if it does resonate, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Other than that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 2, to your reading. These cards over here were the intuitively chosen oracle cards that we will look at when we get to a later part of the reading. These cards are the foundational cards from the Supernatural Oracle to give me a sense about the sort of affinities and connections you might have. And there's a couple of very interesting ones here. We have the vampire energy and the angel energy. So as I said at the beginning, I'm seeing these as neutral. I'm not seeing anything as being negative. So when we look at vampire energy for this card, the card talks about sustaining your aspirations. So this energy is about how you get the life force, how you draw the energy you need to do what you need to do, and seeing vampires in that sort of thing, that they're part of a broader spiritual ecological system that needs to draw energy. And as I said before in the introduction, I do think that vampire energy in this thing is a little bit like empaths, which is not to say that empaths are meaning to draw energy out of other people. It's just that it's a natural thing. There is a capacity for energy exchange that you have, people like this have, that others may not have. And it's around how we use it. And the really beautiful thing here is that we also have angel energy, which is around protection. That suggests that both you are protected in that, so you're not going to be drawing in negative energy, but also that you would have a natural angelic nature. You would not be hurting anybody with this. So that empathy and that ability is to protect and help others. So there is something very much about the celestial realms for you, particularly as heavens also come up. That's partly in this pack around manifestation, but I think you are very strongly connected to the celestial realms. You are very strongly connected to source. And so much of what the energy you get, I think, would be from source. And that's a natural download. So if you sometimes sort of feel electricity in your body, or that you don't know where that came from, or that you suddenly have a sense of like ideas and inspiration that just seems to land in your head somehow, that's this connection, and this is partly the angelic guidance. Some say, and there could be some truth to this, and it could be true of you, Pile 2, that some people reach a particular kind of level in a past life in terms of high magic or spiritual development or mysticism or whatever it might be, where you have effectively almost become an angel. So on earth, then you are an unconscious angel. So this is maybe Spirit saying, understand that's sort of where you are, and that this gives you a very strong connection to others. And part of the challenge always is, of course, having the right boundaries for yourself and for others. You've certainly been doing this for a long time. With sacred stones coming up, that's about building relationships and connections. And I think that's about you drawing inspiration and helping others as well, and about you protecting others. I think you're here to protect people, in actual fact. I think you're here, whether it is your family and your friends or whether it's a broader thing in the community, I think you're here to do that. And I think with the sacred stones, you've done this a lot. I get a very strong sense of things like druidry because of the Stonehenge things here, that kind of background, but also potentially I'm getting indigenous, any sort of indigenous culture, very close to the earth, but also connected to the celestial realms. This is a very as above, so below type of energy. It's very much the magician energy, where you are connected to the earth and the sacredness of the earth, and you really protect that, I think, but you're also connected to the celestial realms, and you're drawing a lot of energy. You're here for a reason. Some of you, I do think there's a lot about past lives here with time travel, but some of you may literally live in a number of dimensions at one time. And I know that sounds quite wild to some, but there are belief structures, and when you look at science with quantum physics, there is every reason to believe that could be occurring, that there are parts of our soul that live in different places. And it feels like you're very connected to Earth because part of your mission is to heal things in the Earth. And you may well be existing on a number of times in Earth at the moment. One of them may in fact be back there. And so part of what the energy you're drawing is the energy of that sort of understanding, that sort of community, that sort of spiritual practice. Of course, it could literally also mean that you have a capacity through astral travel or other things like that to time travel. So take that as you want. That may be something that you relate to and something that you believe that you've done, either astrally or more in more sort of realistic ways. But certainly at the very least, I feel like your soul has developed to a level that you are split dimensionally, and you are drawing energy from different dimensions, and it is all around helping others. It is all around the relationships. I do think you're very connected to the Earth. I do think you would have causes around the Earth and around the environment. So it's really interesting energy pile too. So let's have a look with tarot, given all of that, since you've got quite a bit on your plate, I think, how is that manifesting? How is this manifesting in your day-to-day life at the moment? And then we'll have a look at how other people impact it. But firstly, how is it manifesting for you? Okay, so you are naturally someone, you are here to protect others. You're also here to move energies from the negative into the positive, from the unsustained and unsustainable into the sustainable, happy and positive energy. There is a King of Swords. The King of Swords with the angel, I'm getting a very strong sense of something like the Archangel Michael. It's just a sense of the truth and the honesty and the sense of balance that you have. It's very powerful, and your mind's very powerful. And it's because you're connected to so many things, I think. But you may in fact in this life be in a legal system, in some sort of arbitration or decision-making role, maybe also in academia, science, something like that, where balance and the intellect and bringing things together is important. But you are on a mission as well. And if you're quite young and you haven't really you are going to be. So you either are already, or you are meant to be this King of Swords. You are meant to bring a sense of balance and intellectual rigor to something, but it's not just philosophical. It's actually to bring a happier community, a happier family, a happier friendship circle, a happier workplace, whatever it is. You are here to do that, to bring the energy from the angelic realms to the earth. And if you have to draw from other experiences in history, you may, in fact, some of you I'm getting may be academics. You may study history. You may have a very strong understanding of history. I heard an interesting discussion about prophets, about people who have prophetic power, that in many ways they are not so much that they see the future, but that they understand the past. And I think there's a lot to that. I think because you are kind of existing in a number of time dimensions at any given time, you can see the patterns and you can bring the judgment to it that understands the consequences of things. You are someone who would have a very strong capacity for consequential thinking. And what you probably realized, if you do, is that that's not common. We aren't necessarily taught that anymore. We tend to live just in the moment. You don't just live in the moment. Now, there's a lot to be said for mindfulness and the power of now and all of that, but equally we do need to understand the patterns of time and the patterns of behaviours across communities and people. We can't just live in the now and expect everything to be fine. We need people like you who understand the connections and understand the consequences, because you have been brought in to bring that balance in, and you will be in places, in families, in workplaces, in communities where that does not exist. You will go into chaos and you will find the order in the chaos and bring something better out, because you understand the dynamics that are going on, both intellectually and also on this sort of level. And you can draw that, like you literally, I'm getting that you can draw negative energy out. It's almost like siphoning it out. You could be a natural healer for some people. In fact, with the Ten of Pentacles, you could draw particularly energetically based issues, energetically based diseases. You could draw some of that energy out. It's a very positive energy with that vampiric thing there. It's not depleting people. It's the exact opposite, but it's understanding where things are out of balance. So you're very interesting. I do think that you'll be in some position of power or authority. If you aren't already, you will be. And I think that that's important. You're here for a reason, and you're bringing such a depth of understanding about the patterns of life, pile 2. So given that, let's see what Spirit has to say about how other people will impact this, because you're very connected to other people. You're here for a purpose, pile 2. Okay, so there's really positive here, and there's also the challenges, which is what I would have expected. So I'm going to go to the challenge first. With the devil here, this is breaking people out of old patterns of behavior. You will come across people who cause discord. Whether they consciously do it or not, they will do it, and you will see the patterns and understand why it's happening. And you can draw energy and attention away from them and free people. So you are here to free people to be more authentic to themselves and more balanced and reasonable with other people, have an ethical structure to what they do. And you can get people to see things differently. You can unlock them from that. If the hangman was the right way up, then it would be saying you're constantly having to deal with people who are stubborn and won't move. But there's something about the power of your mind and your understanding, which comes from these realms, that gets people to shift how they look and to be pragmatic. You are here to work out angelic celestial energy in the 3D. It is about the 3D. It is about how we interact with each other. It is about how we treat the environment, how we treat each other, how we are in work, what our industries are, all of that sort of thing. And you are going to be able to shift people from patterns that don't work. This does suggest to me that for many of my pile 2, you had a very strong, and still probably do, hopefully, have a very strong relationship with your mother, or there is a sense about the divine feminine around what you're doing, nurturing and so forth. I'm getting for some of you that you are part of a dynasty. So for some of you, you may be a parent of a child who will take this work on even further. Like the dynasty you have is sort of angelic. So there's that as well coming through. So it's you, and it's almost passing the baton on in that case, if that resonates for you. Other people won't always know how to take you, but they will see you as someone who can still balance and look at alternatives, someone who can see both sides. So you're a natural negotiator, a natural conflict resolution person. You would be an amazing hostage negotiator, any of those sort of big ticket things, because you can really go into it with that strength and that understanding. There's such a strength about this. So you're here for a reason. And I think you came to this reading for a reason. So it's not really fun and games here. This is really quite serious. You are here for a purpose, pile 2. So let's have a look at what the oracle cards were for you. Okay, so we've got duality and ascension. So I'm going to say first off that I think most of you have in a past life gone through ascension already. I think most of you may be far more developed than you even think, and as I say, may be operating on a number of different levels at once because of that. But each time we come into the 3D, we also need to hold to what we've done and build and ascend again. And what I mean by that is that we are never just one thing. So someone, for instance, who has been doing good deeds all their life could then do something that was bad, and that would not necessarily make them bad any more than the good deeds really made them good, but we are what we do. So I think this is Spirit very much saying that even within this, and even though you're ahead of many people, you will have also your own ascension, at the very least to reascend having done this. And part of this is because you're dealing with so much duality. You are going into the darkness to help people. And it's very important, because you are so able to draw energy with that vampiric card, not to draw in stuff that will not help you. Now, I don't think most of you will do that. I think that King of Swords is so strong. I think you have such a strong ethical core. But Spirit is saying be aware of that. Do not make compromises. Do not do things that stop your capacity to ascend when your life is done, because you weren't meant to be drawn down into the mire, you were meant to be drawing people up. Okay, so the colour cards that connect also to chakra, very much in the space of the third eye with these sort of colours with lilac and magenta. Magenta also may be a little bit towards the heart chakra and or the root chakra as well. So lilac here, it talks about immaturity, innocence and youth. So I think this is picking up the dynasty. I think for those that resonates too, you will also be teaching others, and they are either literally your children or they are like your children, and you are taking them through and teaching them how to ascend in some way. But I do feel like it's very much in the 3D. Even though I think you're highly spiritual people, I think most of you, it's going to be about managing conflict and managing change in some way. It doesn't mean that you couldn't be working in spirituality. If you are, then I think you're literally teaching. But I think for many of you, it's like you're here to very pragmatically do something. And then we have magenta, which is different, diverse, unusual. You have a very strong sense of diversity of what, because you come from such a broad range and you're connected with the time travel into so many different existences at once, you really go with and admire and understand the importance of diversity. So I think some of you will work in that area as well too, and that's how you build communities, by honouring diversity. You probably seem very different to people, but I think that most people, they understand on some level that you come with a lot of power and knowledge, and that makes you unusual and different. But in that you can start to show the world how that's a good thing, how it's not something to be frightened of. We also have self-expression and magic through the written word. Okay, so many of you may be able to do this through things that you write and create as well. So it may be that if you are someone who works in conflict and change, it might be that you eventually write something that really helps people deal with that sort of energy. You may also be someone who is creative and you write music, novels, stories, whatever it might be, that talk about these issues and show by the example of the narratives how to move through this. You're very articulate. Your capacity to communicate is off the charts. And how you use the written word, you understand the importance of that. Comes back to this again, this sort of sense of like legal or academic as well around you. So part of what you're going to be doing is communicating to people in some way. But I feel a lot of the time it will be through creative products or potentially non-fiction that is in this space that helps people. So I want to finish off with some astrology energy around you as well, just to sort of see what astrology transit or other astrology energy might be impacting you at the moment. Okay, so firstly we have Aries. So this is ambitious. You're ambitious, and you are ambitious for a reason. You're not ambitious for ego. You're ambitious because you've come here with a purpose and you really understand the importance of it. It's like you're seeing the connection of a bunch of timelines at the moment, and decisions that are being made at the moment are really going to be important for the future of the timelines. It's that kind of thing. So you're here with a purpose. The tarot card is the Emperor, so you may well move into positions of authority. If you aren't already, you may well do that in your life, but this is just a sense of fiery energy that you move forward, and bravery and passion for what you do, which is really important. And Spirit is saying because of that, there is going to be some ease to help you with this. Ease to help you deal with all the conflict and the issues that you have to mediate and help people through. So what I want to do here, when I get a trine, get any kind of transit, I then shuffle the deck and I look for the first two planets that come up so that we can see a little bit more about where is that ease that can help you. So just bear with me for a second until I get two planets. This is a planet, but it's an important point, so the South Node, and we'll get to that in a minute. Oh wow, okay, we've got the South Node and the North Node. All right, so in astrology, the South Node is a fixed point. It operates a bit like a planet, and so does the North Node for the purposes of this sort of reading. And the South Node is what we're moving away from karmically, and the North Node is what we're moving to karmically. it's really interesting because that has that sense of time, and that sense of time in you existing in a number of times all at once. You are moving very easily from what you used to need to do into what your new life purpose is. So spirit is really supporting you and helping you with that. And it's saying everything in the past that you've had, all the sort of karma, the experiences you've had, and even potentially for people like you, what you're experiencing in another time dimension at the moment, you're moving from that into what you're meant to be doing, which I think is about helping people ascend and helping communities and helping diversity and all of those sorts of things. So I think that Spirit is saying you are very much on the right path, and for that reason you will have ease with doing this. But I think the other thing is with the King of Swords, the time travel, the angelic realms, as I said before, you understand the consequences of things. The whole thing about karma, about what the South Node and the North Node represent and the journey that we're on, is understanding what are the impacts of what we do on ourselves, on others, on the world, seeing the logical conclusion of something, being able to see that is, as that advice I heard and mentioned earlier said, that the prophets of the world are the ones who understand the past. You are one of those people, pile 2. You are here for a reason, and Spirit is going to support you. So I think that's pretty exciting. I think you've got some very strong affinities, supernatural and spiritual affinities, and a really strong purpose in this life. And I hope that that resonates for you, and I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I'd love to hear about it in the comments below if this does resonate, because this is so interesting around how you're operating in the world at the moment. I'd be fascinated to hear about it. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3, to your reading. These cards over here were the intuitively chosen oracle cards for your reading, which we'll look at after we've looked at the foundation and the tarot. But these are the foundational cards to give us a sense about what supernatural or mythological or spiritual tribes you may connect to and what abilities you might have. There's 2 things that immediately jump out to me. One is obviously goddess energy. So I would say that you are very connected to goddess energy, and you may have within your spiritual path an alignment to one or more particular goddesses and the practices around that. It certainly appears like some of you may practice some form of ritual or magic around that. And so if you feel, for instance, really attracted to the Morrigan, then you are part of that tribe in terms of the magic and so forth. So there's a real strong connection there. You may also have it through a more spiritual or mystical way where you're connected to certain aspects of the divine feminine. That could be occurring for you as well too. But there is certainly a connection between the way that you practice ritually, or the way that you align yourself to goddess energy. You're also probably a natural medium. There is definitely a sense with the haunted house here that you could connect with people who had passed on. You may be someone who is clairaudient and hears that sort of thing. You may be able to telepathically connect to spirits in other dimensions, or operate and provide mediumship services to people if that's something that you've developed and you want to do. You're also, through that, because of the nature of these cards, able to bring a greater sense of connection and understanding of the passage of life and death, give comfort to people, make them feel more happy with the sense that there are energies and spirits around it. It's making it less about the fear of the unknown and more about the embracing of the difference and the multiplicity of the universe and of our experience. So definitely mediumship, definitely a strong goddess energy around you, a connection to a tribe that is connected in some way to one or more particular goddesses. You are also able to heal, and you're good with divination. So you definitely come with quite a lot of abilities in this area. I'd say that you've either developed them in this life or you've developed them in a past life. So you can get a sense of the future, you can do divination, and you can also heal other people with your energy. And maybe that picks up some of the candle magic as well. But there's a kind of a prophecy feeling here of being able to see the future, understand things. And then there's a sense here about the healing and the connectedness to the divine that you can bring to people, maybe all through this mediumship in some way. It's like you can I often think with divination that it's kind of like a form of collective telepathy that we can see, and I think this is how tarot works as well. We can see through connections to others and connections to the divine that when that circuitry is connected, we can see the ripple effect of what's coming in and out of somebody's life. And for you, it's like you can see the people in other dimensions, ghosts, whatever you want to call it, and how they are interacting with us and impacting the material world. And because of that, you can see what's coming. It's not that it's necessarily going to happen because people have choice, but you can see the most probable thing, which I think is what this is about. Many of the people who've come to this, apart from potentially being mediums, I think could be very good at any form of divination, including tarot, runes, any of those sort of things. But it feels like it's the telepathic end of it. Like you could do astrology, you could do other things like that are more mathematical. But I think for you, you have a direct connection to those energies, a telepathic connection to those energies, and you work with energy incredibly well. So let's have a look with tarot about how these connections and affinities are working in your current life. So I think many of my people who come here may literally work in this sort of area, may be mediums. I'm going to talk about that first, and then I'll talk about it more generally, because obviously not everybody who comes to this is probably a medium. But for those who are working in some form of spiritual practice, which is helping people deal with grief and loss, you help people to feel more comfortable with their emotions and with what they're dealing with. And you are seen as being a very stable, secure, wise person. And also someone who's very, very much there for people when it's necessary. And you seem to always know the right thing to say. The interesting thing is, I think on one level, sometimes you're not sure about it. Sometimes you doubt yourself more than the other people around you do. Sometimes you think, is this true? Am I connecting to something, or is this just in my head? But in actual fact, most people do get, even if it was pile 3, and I don't think it is, but even if it was, the words that you use, the way that you express things, your deep compassion and understanding of others gives people a real sense of happiness and being able to deal with change, and also being able to make choices. I think many people come to you to help make a choice. That's why the Two of Swords reversed is there with the divination, with the runes. People find it harder to make decisions in their life in general than you do. So you help to communicate and give clarity to them. So I do think many of you work in this area, and if you don't, then there's something about what you do in general that harnesses this and you're not even aware of it. So you could be the friend in a friendship circle that everybody trusts your advice and that you kind of clarify things in some way. You could be someone who is a support within a community or a political environment where how you understand things and understand what's coming and how clearly and very groundedly you can communicate that. It helps people make decisions and helps them move through it. But what's going on, pile 3, is that you are connecting on a psychic level. You are connecting on a telepathic and a spiritual level. And then you're bringing it into the material world in some way. So let's have a look with that. What is going on with other people around you? How is this impacting other people, or how are other people impacting you given this ability? Because you're very connected, because of this, you're very connected to other people, whether you're aware of it or not. You're picking up a lot of information from people in every environment you're in. You may very much be an empath. You may be someone who finds it hard to be in crowds, all of those sorts of things because of this natural telepathic ability. If you tried some of those telepathic tests with friends, you'd be off the charts, I'd say. So let's see what's happening around other people for you. So this is interesting. For those who aren't working in this area, I'll go to those who are working in this area afterwards, but I'm going to start in the opposite direction here. For those who aren't working in this area, what you are bringing that is telepathic, spiritual and grounded, people experience as being a very strong way of thinking, a very strong philosophy. and one that helps bring things into balance, that they come to you when they're out of balance. Some of you may literally be counselors or therapists or something like that. So you may be sublimating this ability, whether you're aware you're doing it or not, into academic disciplines and frameworks and so forth, to bring people into a better sense of balance, because you're going to attract people who are out of balance and you need to help them. But I think that if you're not literally being sought out as a psychic or a medium, then there's something about the way you think and people follow that. But people are, and you are attracting, therefore, if that's the case, very conservative people who don't want to sort of believe the world is bigger than this. They just want an answer to something, the answer, and that's it. And it needs to be intellectually rigorous. So I do think that many of you may be in environments or jobs where this ability that you have, you maybe can't even speak about it sometimes. Maybe that's the Two of Swords reversed as well. You feel like pragmatically around the people that you're with, they're too conservative, so you can't necessarily show who you are. Now, if you are working in this field, then I feel like this is a different energy operating here, where you maybe have a competitor who is very cutting in the way that they operate, and very much they want the terrain. It's almost like they think you being on the scene is a threat to them in some way, and they may try to unbalance what you do. But there, I think the Fool reversed is you being pragmatic about how to deal with this, because I think you're more grounded in what you bring in than them. They're very much in their head. And this whole energy about trying to hold something to themselves is not a spiritually open energy. So you will be better at this than they are, but be aware that there is a competitor around you if that's the case, if you're in this area, or a critic. For some, you might literally be on a stage doing something like mediumship and they're like someone who goes, that doesn't exist, it's all cold reading, it's all whatever. That's not who you are. You are picking up things genuinely. But there might be a critic that you need to be aware of. But this is saying just be pragmatic about it. They're not particularly balanced if that's the case. So there's two different energies depending upon whether you're literally working in this field at the moment or whether you are sublimating that ability consciously or unconsciously into a more conservative type of role. So that's interesting. Let's have a look at what oracle cards you had. Okay, so Spirit is saying feel and be spontaneous. Spirit might be saying that for those of you who aren't in this field or aren't really understanding the depth of your ability here, that you're living a bit too much in your head and being conservative. So that's worth doing. And if you are around people who are trying to make you more conservative, be spontaneous in what you do and feel into what you do and own it, because your connection is profound. It's very much from the heart. If you get that card, it's very much a heart-centered thing, but it is saying be spontaneous. There's something about breaking out of conservative approaches. So even if you are doing this, it might be do it somewhat differently in some way will help, because you have the natural ability. There's maybe a better way of expressing it, but it is saying get out of the more conservative side of things, be spontaneous. You'll start to understand more about the ability that you have. We have grey and we have lemon. Oh, okay. So this is saying that there is business, conservative energies around you. So this is about business, duty, obligations, or whatever. If you are working in this field, there is maybe a sense that you get weighed down with the obligations and what you have to do. So I think that may be part of this, be spontaneous as well too. You are allowed to have time for yourself. I remember reading an interview with someone who was a psychic who said that she was called at any hour of the day and any hour of the night, and she sometimes felt like she didn't exist for herself but for other people. And I think you may have a bit of a sense of that if you're working in that area. If you're not, this is probably saying that in your day-to-day life and in your work, you're doing a very conservative thing that doesn't necessarily understand or support that type of thing, and you feel that sense of obligation to that, and literally then the grey becomes an energy of feeling grey and feeling suppressed. So that's why I think it's connecting with the red and with the feel, sort of like don't lose that. Now, interestingly enough, in the Kabbalah, grey is the colour of Chokhmah, which is wisdom, but it's undifferentiated wisdom. It's not connected to the heart. The heart comes with Binah, which is the next Sephiroth down, and it, I think, would be the feeling. So there's maybe a connection here that the cards are saying about bringing your wisdom and grounding it through your heart. So I think in that case, those cards are picking up you. Then we have lemon, which is connected to the color spectrum for both the solar plexus and potentially the heart chakras with the sort of yellowy green kind of coloring. And that, again, with that feeling and coming out of that grey energy into something that's more balanced, you have clean, fresh and new. So there's definitely something here where you've either got a battle going on with someone who's a critic, or you're a critic of yourself, or you're in a too conservative environment for the ability that you have. But there is a capacity to be fresh and new and do something that's more true to yourself. And we have movement and balance. Okay. So I think Spirit is saying, for all my pile 3, there is a choice around you at the moment about how to use this ability, how to recognize it in yourself and how to use it. And it's almost like whatever you do, as long as you feel into it, you feel that, and you make a decision and you move, that opens up the floodgates, that open up the energy for you so much more. It's like maybe this is why we have the Two of Swords reversed, that you are also caught in a situation where you're not sure what to do and what to decide. And sometimes just to make a small change, a small calibration, a small movement is what opens things up, and it will bring things more into balance. So again, I get this sense that you've got a battle around you, or you're not in quite the right environment. But this is suggesting that even a small change, you might then be okay in that environment, or you might be able to deal with the competition, and you can bring things more into balance. So to help with that, I want to close with a couple of cards around that were in the oracle cards around astrology. So what astrology energy is around you at the moment. Okay, so this is interesting. So firstly, you have Virgo. So that is the grounding. There's a very strong Virgoan energy sort of feeling around things like the Queen of Pentacles as well. The tarot card for that is the Hermit. So that is that introspection, going within yourself and aligning to spirit. So it's certainly saying that part of what you're meant to be doing in the world is aligning your spiritual purpose and abilities to what you're doing in a very earthy, pragmatic way. So you are the natural sort of person to do this as a business if you wanted to do it. But if not, you bring some of that energy and understanding into whatever you do on a practical level. And that's really staying true to yourself and not being molded by the environment, but molding the environment with your wisdom. So that's a really powerful thing. Mercury is the celestial body, the planet that rules Virgo. So communication is important here. And then we have the 5th house. And the 5th house is about creativity. It's about love. It's about children. It's about all that is true really to you on that sort of level. The planet that rules it is the sun. So there is really a sense of owning yourself and owning who you are and understanding the sun is your life path. So that is important. And maybe looking at what your sun sign is. You may be a Virgo, but you don't have to be. You may, whatever your sun sign is tells you something about this. It's part of what the life path, it's what we're growing into. The ruling sign here is Leo. So there's this very strong sense again of being true to yourself and owning your truth with this. But it may also be suggesting that part of the way through this is going to be in a relationship. It's either a relationship you're in at the moment that's romantic, that will help you, and being like more balanced and spontaneous and enjoying that, and less focused on work and conservative approaches and everybody else's opinions may help unleash all of this for you. Or it may be saying that a new relationship is coming in that is going to really help you do that and bring you more balance and more understanding about your abilities. I'm also getting for some of you with that haunted house, with the mediumship thing, that you are being watched over and guided by a loved one who's passed on, and they're very keen on you being in a loving relationship if you aren't already. And if you are, that it continues that way, that any change that you do protects that and continues with that sort of happiness, because they want you to be happy and they want you to sort of feel new and fresh and able to move forward. So my overarching feeling here, I think, pile 3, is that you have these natural abilities. You're a natural medium, you're a natural divination person, all of that, and you have very strong connection to goddess energy. So that very much connects to, I think this may be a female person who's passed on, and it may not even be someone you knew. It may be an ancestor or something like that. So there's a very strong connection around all of that for you. but you are in an environment that you're not using it, or you're around people who are competing with you around it. I'm not sure which it is. It's probably different for different people who've come to this reading. But if you make the choices and feel into who you are, and you take one little step at a time, and you're spontaneous and you own what you have, then you're going to be able to rise above that. So I hope that that was helpful, and I hope that it resonated for you, and I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if this has resonated and you'd like to share, I'd love to hear about how it has and what you're doing in your life with these abilities in the comments. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings.